What's going on, everybody? I'm Tom.
I'm Pat.
And I'm Zach.
We're best friends, and you're listening to the Reminiscent Podcast. They say you can't choose your family. Well, you also can't choose which era of music you grew up in. This is a weekly show where we discuss our favorite bands from adolescence and how they continue to shape our lives today. Each week, we'll head back to the early 2000s and take a closer look at the cards we were dealt. Happy New Year, Pat.
Happy New Year, Tom.
How's it been so far? What'd you do last night? Anything good?
I had Christmas off, so I worked New Year's, but came home and Jesse and I drank some very cheap Prosecco from the Walgreens down the road, and now I'm gonna try to go through January without having a drink and see how start off clean this year. So pretty exciting.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
How about you? You were skiing, right?
We went ice skating on this like big frozen lake up in the mountains. Saw some fireworks. It was good.
Fireworks in the mountains sounds
it wasn't bad.
More than just good.
Wasn't bad. But we are here on New Year's Day at 10 in the morning to talk about Taylor Swift's Reputation tour that released on Netflix. Was it yesterday, right? Or the day before?
If you would have asked me how my New Year's Eve was and what I did, or I guess you did. I guess I should have said almost 95% of it was watching the marathon concert that is the Reputation tour by Taylor.
I, on the other hand, woke up at 7 in the morning to watch it on New Year's Day. I just finished it about 3 minutes ago.
So this is fresh. This is fresh material, about as fresh as it gets. Should we just dive right in? I mean, what were your takeaways? What was your favorite moment? What was your least favorite moment?
Well, I need to preface this with just the fact that there's no way that this tour cannot be compared to the 1989 World Tour. Maybe that's not fair to say that it can't be, but I spent the better half of this week watching the 1989 World Tour live on Apple Music. I watched it 3 times this week because it's like my favorite thing. Like, I loved that documentary. I loved how it was presented. And I went so far as to spend about 2 hours trying to find the sequins bomber jacket that she wore in the first few numbers of that show.
Right, sure. As one does.
I'm happy to report I found who the seller of the jacket is. Mm-hmm. But what I spent most of my time doing was trying to find any version of it for sale, because it's been sold out forever since they've renamed it The Taylor since she wore it. But they do have a men's version of it of similar color, not exactly, but I bought it and it should be here tomorrow.
Nice.
And
it would have been. We should have waited till tomorrow so you could wear it while we recorded. Quite frankly.
Oh, I know. It's fabulous. That's all I can say.
So was this one distinctly different in the sense that it was just the concert, like in a video, and it wasn't a documentary? Yes. So they weren't even comparable in a lot of ways, in that specific way, I mean.
Right. And to be honest, I was a little... I'd say I was bummed out about it, but I know when I was watching the 1989 tour with Megan, she said she wishes it was like just the concert. So...
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, what I liked about the 1989 tour was kind of like the true personality behind it. And I felt like the Reputation tour was severely lacking in almost like, I don't want to give the hot take away soon,
I'm going to save my take for like 10 minutes. I will say this. We did an episode that reviewed Reputation after it came out. You can go listen to it if you want. Basically, we didn't care much for at least half of it, I think was what we came away with.
Yeah.
And I think the more we listened, the more that held up. I don't think we were too upset with the review, even though it happened perhaps a little bit rushed. That was kind of my big knock, was obviously the production was incredible, and it was huge, and it was big, and it was ambitious and sweeping, and, you know, she flew twice, maybe 3 times. There might have been a third time she flew in there. One of the times was in the carcass of a snake.
Right.
Good stuff all around. But my big knock is that this wasn't the Red Tour. It wasn't the 1989 tour. It just happened to be an album that I think you and I only liked half of. So the songs that we liked off of it were good, but, you know, I don't think it was going to stack up to the other ones just by virtue of the songs themselves. Is that kind of down the path you were leaning as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think I texted you a couple weeks ago and just decided like I'm going to listen to Reputation all the way through because I deleted like over half the songs from my phone to try to make like a really good like 5 or 6 song EP. And I texted you like, man, I just don't vibe most of this album. And you were like, well, then the review stands up.
Right.
You know,
because I felt
that's
like we rushed
exactly
it.
what
Like,
you said.
oh, maybe I like more of this than I thought, but we might have been a little more harsh on the recording itself. But I do think ready for it. If we just, I kind of want to just go song by song here and start ripping it into it.
Well, do you want some fun facts first?
Actually, I was, hell yeah.
Okay. So just a couple things about the tour. This was found on BuzzFeed, so you know it's right.
They do good investigative work.
They actually do, right?
Yeah, so, all joking aside.
So this was actually one of the biggest tours, or the biggest tour in U.S. history across like all different factors here. It said at least the first 3 shows were sold out, and the tour grossed an average of $7 million a night.
That's pretty
insane.
good.
And to put that in perspective, 1989 World Tour grossed an average of a measly $4.7 million a night.
Yeah. You got to account for the bejeweled snake mic budget, though. That ups the production cost at least a smidge.
Right. So she played less nights than her previous tours, but there were significantly more fans there. So her numbers of this tour beat out the rest. I mean, she was selling like, 70,000 tickets a night, which is just, I can't imagine that many people in the same place. It's insane.
Plenty, some might say.
So when she was in Denver, Colorado, which is where I live, and also we should preface this with neither of us were at the live show, which was a huge bummer. I had like $700 of tickets in a cart on the day that they were announced and just couldn't pull the trigger because, again, didn't love this album enough to like throw that much money at it.
Yeah, she's young enough. I mean, we're still like 30 years from the farewell tour and stuff. I mean, there's going to be a lot of iterations. There's going to be a return to country album tour, probably, I'm assuming,
Definitely.
in her late 30s or 40s that I would love to see. And again, not that she has to or should, but if
Right.
it happened, that'd be great. And I think I'd enjoy that show more.
I did hear a banjo in one of her songs from this album, which I thought was super interesting. So you keep saying return to country. I felt it.
Well, she had an interesting moment where she broke it down, and we'll talk about this a little later, where, that nugget about every song she tries to write so that she could just be up there with a guitar singing to the audience,
Right.
which
Yes.
it's always fun to see those. I think it was maybe 3 years ago she pulled out was it South by Southwest? She pulled out an acoustic cover of Wildest Dreams that lives on YouTube. She really knocks it out of the park. But there's always that acoustic core there, I guess, as we've learned through this video, which was nice.
I think you're referring to her like Grammy performance in
yes,
like
that's right.
wearing all black. Yeah.
Indeed.
So in Denver, she headlined at the Mile High Stadium, becoming the first woman ever to headline. And that's about a 17-year-old venue at this point.
Wow.
At that venue, she beat U2's record by a casual 1.2 million, it says. It doesn't say what the gross was for that concert, but just crushing all these people that have been around forever. I mean, she's outselling U2, Guns N' Roses, One Direction, like all these people at this point.
I mean, that makes sense to me because if you line up all the hits and all the songs you could sing along to, I mean, U2's catalog is obviously huge, but at this point, it's the body of work just stands up for itself. It's not like some weird teen phenomenon thing. It's been more than a decade of her work. At least 4, if not like 6 crazy albums. I don't know. So that's cool to learn because that doesn't surprise me. I mean, U2's body of work isn't growing or improving over time, and hers is rapidly. So it's interesting to hear those names that she toppled.
Yeah.
And she's still so young. It's insane.
I know. Long career ahead of her. So this fun fact is a little confusing here. It says she made history at her second show in Dublin, Ireland on June 16th when she became the first woman to ever headline Croke Park Stadium. It also says this happened to be her 13th show of the tour, but it just said second show. I don't know. Anyway, 4th woman ever to play a concert at some stadium. All these are getting, it said she was the first woman, then it says she was the 4th. But anyway, it's a venue that's been there for 134 years. The only other women who have played or headline there were Tina Turner, Celine Dion, and Beyonce. So I guess that ranks her up there with those legends, which makes sense, right? I mean, the highest
Sure.
grossing tour in U.S. history, right? It's insane.
Indeed. That's good company for sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's, I guess, to be expected.
So you're saying it was not a small tour?
So let's go into kind of our first impressions of it, and go off of what you said. Like, when I saw the production value of the first couple songs, and again, comparing it to 1989, it almost seemed like a budget version of the 1989 tour. So I immediately tried to look at what the ticket sales were compared to that, because like 1989 had many more dancers. The band was like more in the spotlight. They had a stage that lifted up and swung around the whole crowd. It just seemed like a bigger production. And right out of the gate, I was super let down by the production of this one. It just seemed like it was rushed, like a last minute thing, which I know there's no way that it was, but I don't know, man.
I'll say it was funny to hear Jack Black on, I think it was maybe Conan 4 or 5 years ago when Tenacious D was coming out with Rise of the Phoenix and they were going to tour again. And Conan was like, why are you only doing it with you and KG? And he was like, because the take home is split right down the middle. And that's like, you don't have to pay a huge fucking band. So I could see where an artist would do the swinging stage thing and be like, you want to not do the swinging stage and I'll make $3 million more a night or whatever. I know that math doesn't stand up, but I could understand if that was the decision making there, because I still thought it was rather grandiose. I mean, the screens, plural, were huge and split apart and exposed the band at times, and there were different sets of dancers. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying it was, I don't know, do you feel like people there might have felt like I was expecting more? Because, I mean, there was a lot going on, even if it was less than 1989.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I expected more.
Ooh, the danger of expectations.
I know. Well, I mean, again, I watched 1989 tour 3
right.
whole times. That is 6.5 hours out of last week I spent watching that tour.
You got to watch almost anything else for the next month just to clean your palate a little bit, because I think that's too much Taylor for 2 weeks, man.
No way, dude.
Just dive right back into it. Only Taylor 2019.
So I don't know, man. I mean, so this was filmed indoors. There were some outdoor concerts, and I was reading on the Taylor Swift subreddit that in the outdoor venues, there were much more fireworks, much more pyrotechnics, more stuff going on. So I guess this wasn't representative of every
I'll say this
show.
And I'll say this about track 1. Ready for it? Great.
Yeah.
Track 1 on the album. I think we talked about that on the previous pod. So you said there was less going on. I like the live drummer, killed it all night.
Oh, yeah.
You could hear her vocals
fantastic.
clearly throughout. And that song rips on its own. And I think that because she can pull it off, it was more of like a band putting on a performance experience, I guess. So it was vocals, it was drums, it was live, it was still the same songs, just presented in a different way. And again, it might have been less than 1989, but Ready for It, even without the studio produced, this and that tracks underneath. I mean, it was a live band playing a good song and it still hit, and they did it in a way that was presented and it was new and it was fun. And by the way, every shot of the crowd, they were like dying of excitement, like a dog finding out his owner just got home or something. Like they were freaking out. But I thought it was the perfect song to start with. And I kind of liked the stripped down drums. You could hear those clearly, vocals. It was a performance through and through. When I had an internship in Pittsburgh one year, and I had to go take photos at a Britney Spears concert. And all I remember is these grandiose sets and not a lot of emphasis on making sure the vocals were super clear, I think, if I remember correctly, so it was still like the pop star performance with the sets and the costume changes and stuff, but it was still her singing and playing instruments and stuff for a good chunk of it. So I appreciated that and kind of like that right out of the gate with the first track as well.
So I would have liked to have listened to it in surround sound, but my wife is still asleep as we speak, so I was listening with my Bluetooth headphones on from the Apple TV. I felt like her isolated vocals were somewhat buried. I mean, she has all her backup singers, and she has backing tracks of her own voice, which is fine.
The Reddit thread you showed me, people made that same complaint, and I thought they were, like, maybe we're talking about two different aspects of it, but I thought you could understand that when it was her singing just fine, I guess, or when it needed to be. I guess it didn't I never noticed it, or it didn't take away from my experience. Like, oh, they should turn those up or something. I guess I'm not sure what the complaint was. Just volume alone, or just how it stood out?
So I think if you're talking about just the vocals, they were loud enough, but her, isolated vocals, I think could have been up a little bit. And I know that both in this tour and 1989, she's not singing absolutely every part of it. Sometimes her backup vocals come in and then she does like the vocal fill over it. And that's fine. But you can tell sometimes she was like lip syncing over the track and then she went into her fill. Like she did it in Shake It Off in 1989 World Tour. I think it's fine to not sing some parts when you're doing the other stuff over it, but like you don't need to pretend like you are. Like I'm not saying she was lip syncing this song. I mean, you can almost guarantee that the vocals were done afterwards in the studio, as are every single live performance ever recorded in history. They always redo the vocals. But yeah, I would have liked to have heard a little more of her live vocals there. But again, it wasn't like horrible, it was just,
I will say
could have been a little more.
And here's what I wrote. Jesus Christ, the screens and fireworks, and we've come a long way from the high school cheerleader outfits of 3 or 4 tours ago. So those are my first two takeaways. The next 2 songs for me were songs that didn't blow me away on the record. Did Something Bad and Gorgeous. Gorgeous, I thought was an interesting choice to include in the first 3, but she also kind of used it to just introduce the dancers and kind of talk to the crowd and, hey, Dallas, I've been here a bunch, so maybe Gorgeous was just a song that was a throwaway so she could get some of the talking out of the way without wasting a good song on it. That's kind of the vibe I got.
Yeah, I really loved the intro they did for I Did Something Bad. I think it was super interesting. It really built the hype into like, oh my God, when is the song going to start? But like in a good way. I like that. Yeah, they did the introductions throughout that. I also like that. I think every tour that she's done, she has started the tour with that album opener, which would have been Are You Ready For It? The thing that did bother me was like everyone just kind of looks so angry on stage for the first 2 songs, and I know that like that's kind of the point of the song.
Yeah, it's the Reputation tour, man. Bejeweled snake mics. It's on like Donkey Kong, man.
And the whole like album was kind of like a facade, like, oh, you want me to be this like bad, like my bad reputation, I'm going to give it to you. But
it's almost like fan fiction or something, right? Like, here's what this character, if this character's real. I mean, she addresses it in that Grammy performance I referenced.
Yes.
If the character's real, this is what the fan fiction album would be from that character, right? And even in the music videos, there's the 9 or the 13 Taylors or whatever. I don't know if there were 13, but I'm assuming there would be because that's her number or whatever.
That's her thing, yeah. Oh, that's when the fireworks came in, and I was like, fuck, dude, they're doing fireworks inside? Like, that is insane.
It's against the fire code. It's gotta be. What are you doing down there in Dallas?
I thought it was pretty cool, but yeah. Everyone looks so angry.
It always surprises me, like, at sporting events when they shoot flames. I'm like, this can't be, oh my God. Those flames are too big, right? Maybe I'm getting old. They pull out a tune from 1989 for track 4, Style. I wrote, Tom is a happy boy. And then the next thing I wrote was, this crowd is fucking hype. They were so into it, man. Style is such a good song.
One of my favorites.
Almost every part of that.
I realized that like going into Style, I was like, how long has it been since she's done a costume change? Like that was my first thought. And then that's when I also noticed the backdrop, which kind of looked like a snowplow to me, kind of opened up and then the band was there. Because I was like, where the is the band? Like, this is so weird. Like,
yeah, you could hear the drummer distinctly. And I'm like, he's ripping it up. I'd love to see him. You don't see him till way later in the show.
Right. I was kind of horrified she didn't play all of Style because it's one of my favorite songs on 1989. But then it rolled into Love Story, which I thought was really interesting because the past few times we've seen her, they've done like a really adjusted version of Love Story, which I am absolutely enthralled with. But I wanted that, but it was cool to hear it go back like a return to form.
Yeah. In the notes, I already touched on it at the beginning of the pod, but I get that we're going to get fewer teen breakup songs as we go along, but whatever Reputation was on average or overall was, to me, less her wheelhouse than whatever Love Story or Songs Off Red are. Just to me, that's not to take anything away from what 1989 was, because it was just full of bangers. I don't think anybody could deny it. But to me, her wheelhouse is more the Love Story stuff. And I don't know. It keeps coming back to this tour was just the Reputation tour, and it was limited by that and that alone, kind of all the way through.
Yeah.
But she pulled out some deep cuts, as we'll talk about later. Oh, I'll say this about Reputation in general. Like, I couldn't help but, on Reddit and stuff, people were talking about just how crazy the stalker situation has gotten for her and stuff. And it kind of got me thinking about how, like, the life of a pop star, Ariana Grande, Mac Miller's dead, Pete Davidson practically wrote a suicide note on Instagram 2 weeks ago. That would be like, if that were to happen, God, I hope it doesn't, right? Of course. That'd be two, like, bodies on Ariana's dating record, which I can't even imagine, right? So if Reputation was a creative outlet for Taylor to take all the crazy, goofy, very dangerous stalker stuff that goes with being an international famous pop star, I'll take an album that vents frustration and is a little less, I guess, of a bop than 1989. If that's the outlet, young performers often turn to drugs and stuff, I guess. Not that she hasn't or will or should or won't or hasn't, right? But, if Reputation was the outlet for all the unfortunate stuff that comes with the impossibility of going to the grocery store or dating or living in general, again, mostly I couldn't help but continue to think, like, she seems happy. I hope so, because, the stalker situation seems legitimately unsafe. I think there was a report that she was using facial recognition technology to pick out certain people at certain shows on this tour just by necessity, which was, I don't know why my mind went there. But anyway, I think we rail on Reputation a lot, but if it was just like okay, here's my nasty persona, goofy Snake Mike stuff, it's like, okay, cool. If this is that album that needed to happen to vent all that in a healthy way, sounds good to me.
Yeah.
That was kind of my take I was forming through the first third of the show, I guess.
Okay. Well, from there we go into Look What You Made Me Do, which is the most...
Yeah, she pulls out all the snakes. Here's the Snake Mike, snake,
yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay. To me, again, a friend Ryan of mine years ago was like, she's just a grown-up theater kid that is still a theater kid, and that's fine, and it's allowed to be true, and it's allowed to be okay for her to be very good as well with that being true. For me, again, the persona, whatever. Again, this album wasn't for me, but it's cool, it's fun. The fact that she flew in a snake carcass a few songs after this moment was fun. It's not like it wasn't fun to look at, right? Like, oh, cool, flying snake carcass, dope.
Yeah, I think that was cool, but like, so the big snake that came on center stage from Look What You Made Me Do, it just kind of like went up and then stayed stationary, which I'm sure the technical aspect of like a moving snake would be more than they could probably overcome. But it was so corny to me, dude. That snake was so embarrassingly corny.
It was kind of like a off-Broadway Jafar thing if Aladdin were a stage production. It was definitely like, this is like Den of Thieves, but in a bad way or something. I don't know. It's just like, okay, can we move? Like, I don't know. I'm glad there was ebbs and flows and it wasn't all snakes all the time.
Yes.
Which sounds like a bad slogan for like a monster truck rally
all
at your local
snakes
civic
all
center.
The time.
But like, so she only pulled it out and really committed to it for a few tunes, which was good. But yeah, I'm with you. It just wasn't for me. Endgame, I love that song because my wife, when she drinks wine, plays it inevitably. Like, she'll ask Alexa to play it right away. I like the song. That goes into King of My Heart. I don't really give a about that song. I'll say this. It definitely was a Reputation tour. She played almost every song on the album.
Yes.
Right? Which,
if not all.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
She pulled out some oldies too, but...
Yeah. It was around Endgame that I realized she hasn't had any kind of guests or anything. I don't think...
I had forgotten about that, yeah.
Because it was such a big part of the 1989 documentary where they're like, I bring out a different person every night and blah, 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 which maybe that's what Charlie XCX and Camila were later on. But my takeaway from King of My Heart was that was one of the few songs that I really loved, like some of the instrumentals on, and they brought those big drums on stage. And I want to talk about those because they made this big deal about these huge kind of like Japanese drums, and you could see when the men were hitting them, their mallets sunk so far into them that I was just like, oh, these are nylon drums and they're not making sound. And as if that wasn't bad enough that they were fake drums, which is fine, for the show, but in the music, in the recording alone, there was nothing to even represent the sound of what they were trying to portray on stage. Like, there should have been big, like, not even, just like huge drum sounds. And, the drummer was doing his tom thing, and there was some other stuff going on with the drums. But they had this whole rehearsed thing where the guys were playing drums and there was no
So you think there was
audio.
some shenanigans with the performance of the drums and the audio of the drums?
Well, it was just like, if you're going to fake playing the drums, at least have a sound to represent what you're faking. It was just like, okay, they're hitting fake drums, but there's no sound coming. It just seemed weird. It seemed very weird. Like, it was great for the show.
Also, quick aside, Yamato, that drumming show, which is a show based solely around the drumming aspect.
Yes.
Came to our high school one year and they ripped it up. That show is so good. I'm like, man, they're including a Yamato show in the middle of the Reputation tour. Like, they're gonna put those dudes out of business. It's unfortunate.
I remember that show at high school. We were in the middle of jazz band when we left and we went to go see them and we were all hyped. And we came back and we all just sat in the room like, we fucking suck, dude. Like, no one was inspired to make music that day.
Man, there's the version of music class where they play stomp and they're being lazy and you're like, yeah, let's bang on stuff. But then you like get the instruments and you see Yamato, you're like, no, this isn't for me. Like, I'm not going to be
Leave it to the
third grade versus 10th grade. It's like, let's be something to 10th grade, which is no, that ain't me, man.
All right. So after King of Heart,
They did the Coldplay bracelets. I don't know if Coldplay started it, but the stadium bracelet thing. What's interesting about in the internet age and all that is I went to a Cavs playoff game a few years ago and they had like every t-shirt, like they did like everyone wearing one color t-shirt. Everyone had the light up bracelets. They did a performance at halftime and between every quarter almost. And it's almost like every venue in between sports and music are all taking the best versions of what the experiences of being in a stadium is and just using it. So I don't know who started the light up bracelet thing, but I love it. And I thought it was a nice touch here.
I think they did it better in 1989. They had them too. And also, one thing I noticed in the crowd, there was not a single light up sign, which in 1989, everyone made these huge signs that had like Taylor, they lit up, they blinked, they did all of that. And there was nothing there. So I would like to know if anyone was at the show, was that like a rule? You could not have light up signs? Because I thought it was fascinating. Not a single person in that crowd had one. Which, fine, whatever.
Unlike 1989, as we've heard. They were different tours and very different productions altogether. Nah, that's a cheap shot.
So then we had Delicate, which was one of my favorite songs on the album.
Yeah, great music video, great song. My note here was best moment so far, ? And then a few lines later, she's floating. So this was probably my top moment of the show, I think.
Okay, mine's still coming.
Ooh,
not too far away.
No, I like this. I wrote that down. I also wrote that there's no songs from Red yet. This is bullshit. That was an ongoing thought for me, of course. There only ended up being 2 tunes. One of them was a very, very deep cut, like an intentionally deep cut. So more on that later. We go right into Shake It Off, and this is where the guests come in. I forgot is this something she does for all her tours lately, or?
I mean, that's the way they portrayed it in 1989 anyway. Was that like
every
night?
Shake It Off is a weird song to have the guests because it's kind of they couldn't really flex their vocal muscles. There's kind of like some quick verses and then they're out. I was like, they didn't really get to, do their thing.
Yeah. My first thought was, why is there a fucking snake on stage for Shake It Off?
Yeah, you're a little off brand. It's like, this isn't the snake song. This isn't from the
I didn't mind them as much as the first one, but, they have some of the crowd coming through for the purpose of the video. And with headphones on, I could hear how loud that snake rigging was, like through the crowd, through the vocals. It was just like clinging and clanging. Like, I didn't know if that was as present if you were right there by that little side stage, which was cool. She kind of performed in the back. But yeah, I cannot believe that, first of all, Shake It Off was not a bigger production than it was. Because that was like, if you know one song of Taylor Swift's, it's probably Shake It Off, right?
Ooh, no.
No. Oh, okay.
I don't think that's her most favorite song.
Well, I mean, I think
like Tim McGraw would be your most favorite song or something.
I thought that would have been her biggest commercial success of a song. I could be absolutely wrong. But anyways.
That's a good question. Put it on the poll, man.
Yeah. Could not believe she had a guest singing that song. I mean, the whole second verse, right?
Well, I will say this. I think there's a couple decisions in the next few songs that I didn't quite understand. Why have your guest sing on a song that you can basically talk through? I thought that was a missed opportunity. And I don't mean that as a diss. It was just like, it's a cool idea. I love that she brings guests. It makes every night on every tour different and fun and cool. But then she goes into hands. She brings out the guitar. She has that moment with the tissue, whatever. Like, I'm sick. These handsome men are bringing me tissues. That's cool. It's all fun. It's very personable. And then she goes into Hands Tied, which to me is one of the best songs off Reputation. Yes. But she does a stripped down guitar version. So she goes from letting her guests talk sing through the easiest song to karaoke ever, and then she does the stripped down version of the most boppiest bop on Reputation. Like, no, let the drummer rip and come out strong with Hands Tied. And
I know.
Because you're going to get a stripped down piano version of New Year's Day and all that on it. So why would you strip down Hands Tied? I mean, it has one of the most danceable, almost dubsteppy, like droppy flows. I don't know. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, why would you strip down one of your strongest cards in your hand from this album to use? I don't know. I just thought it was a couple missteps about halfway through the show here with these two.
I definitely agree. And this was about the point where as I get older and I go to shows, you get to that point around the third band where you're like, how much fucking longer until the headliner comes out? Like, do I just go home because I'm kind of tired and miss the band that I came here for?
You know what's funny? I was at home on my couch and I had these thoughts while watching this movie.
Dude, that's what I mean. I had that feeling through Shake It Off.
Down, Hands Tied? What the hell?
Well, I mean, Shake It Off, I was just like, okay, this is not what I'm hoping for. I love the decision to have a stripped down song. I don't think this was the right choice. And this was around the time where I was like, oh my God, I have to sit through another hour, which devastated me because, again, I watched 7 hours of her live concerts yesterday. Right? Like, I felt self-conscious. I was having these feelings, but it was kind of like, I feel like I'm waiting for the headliner. And that's not how I typically feel about Taylor. So I was really bummed out about that. I love this song. The acoustic version was like interesting. It was cool to hear that it could be done, but I wish it was done for like
something
King of My Heart or something. So one thing I noticed interesting going from Dancing with Her Hands Tied to All Too Well, which by the way, Rolling Stones ranked every single one of her songs. This was ranked number 1, which I absolutely agree with. But I don't know if you noticed, she had a green...
Oh, what album is that on, Tom? That's an interesting thought.
I wonder.
Thought experiment.
I don't know if you noticed this, but she had a green microphone with Dancing with Her Hands Tied. And then all of a sudden she had, I think it was the Reputation microphone during All Too Well. I don't think she moved stages. So I'm wondering how and why a microphone was swapped out between these two songs when it's like the same act.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe she did multiple nights in Dallas.
On
the Reddit thread, they were like, why do it indoors, blah, 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 chance of rain, plus the jump cuts in the lighting would be super noticeable. So
yeah, I mean, I was wondering why they chose to do it in Dallas, because first of all, it's the last night of the tour. Everyone's going to be tired. Voices might be blown, whatever. But they did it 2 nights in a row. So I was assuming they wanted to do it on a night where they could have, film 2 nights and comp it together. So that might be what that was. The microphone swapping out there. So what did you think of All Too Well?
Well, I'll tell you, I like it very much, obviously. The lyric about the dancing in the refrigerator light always absolutely friggin' kills me.
Dude, I cry every time I hear this song.
You know I love that album. I think it's her absolute wheelhouse. I love that she went pop and went in that direction as an experimenting, but I think from where she started, super country, only acoustic, on her trip towards pop, I think Red was the crossroad where she killed it. I think there's all but 2 of those songs are something that could be included in a chunk of encores. I just love every song on that album. I love when bands do deep cuts / I'm acknowledging at this moment that it's super rare. So I wanted to ask you, is there a band and a song that you'll never see live, but you'd really like to? Because to me, this was this had to have been such a treat for so many people, right?
Yeah, I mean, I saw in the Reddit a few days before the release, someone's like, do you understand the gravity of the situation that we'll be getting a 4K live video of All Too Well in 2019? Like, people were hyped. And again, yes, one of her...
Well, this took on a viral life of its own, so not every song gets that treatment. But still, the concept hopefully grows and other people steal it and use it.
I mean, I think for me, like, any song off of the Wonder Years' first album performed live would be a fucking treat.
Yeah.
And that's probably kind of what this is to a lot of people. I mean, not like, I wouldn't even say it's a deep cut. I mean, it's like one of the most popular songs from a slightly older album.
Right. Yeah, true. Not technically a charter. I think for my dad, he always talks about Rosalita from Bruce. It's like an 8-minute song off one of his first few records that is really great, but hard to pull off in a concert.
What did you expect the band to come in halfway through All Too Well?
No, I didn't.
Really? I thought it was going to explode halfway through.
Like
it does in the song.
I just thought I was too busy just kind of taking it in for what it was, because it was, again, the first and only one of 2 songs from Red in the entire show, which is fine.
Yeah, I really wish it ended on a bigger note, especially because it's like the end of Act 3, right? I would have loved to have seen fireworks, at the end of this one, but it stayed stripped down the whole time. Took me by surprise. Didn't hate it. It was just I was hoping for it to be more like the record version, I guess. And then from there we go into her best song of all time.
Ooh, you know what I noticed about this quote, best song of all time, is that I thought she was playing Snoop Dogg's Drop It Like It's Hot. I was like, why is the interlude to this next song the beat from Drop It Like It's Hot by Snoop Dogg, which is my favorite note of the entire show. And then she just starts singing Blank Space over it. I'm like, oh my God, Blank Space and Drop It Like It's Hot share eerily similar beats. And that is one of my new favorite things in the entire world. Did you hear that at all? I thought it was going crazy. I was like, I was waiting for the
We used to, in our gym in 8th grade, we had these big glass windows. And if you pounded on one of them in the center, it got this like insane bass tone because it was just like a big glass window and a boom. And around that time that song came out, so we would have all the guys line up and bang on the window, the boom, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka. We'd all clap our hands and that's just a really good memory of that song.
Which could have been either Blank Space or Drop It Like It's Hot.
Blank Space is great. Again, it fell short of 1989's performance, but, I expected it at this point.
This was an interesting... Reddit seemed to love this one. The next song, Bad Blood, She's Flying Again, mixed in with a medley from one of her early songs, Should Have Said No. Good live stuff. You know, it's always nice to see a medley / what the artist has interpreted of their own work over time and stuff. A good moment, probably a number 2 moment for me / number 1 moment for a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, I thought Bad Blood was actually like the peak of the entire performance. I love that a banjo came in because like the instrumental was a return to form, but it wasn't there in the original. So I love that they brought that in. I thought that was a really interesting compositional choice that I loved. And then going into Should Have Said No, it was like going in and out, right? Just incredible. I thought this was, I mean, if all the rest of this video was all for naught, I would take this song and play that on repeat for sure. I loved it. I thought it was...
Do you think this is where it peaks?
Yeah, the only point, I guess.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would agree with you. The falling action comes immediately after this. I mean, she does Don't Blame Me, Love Live from Speak Now. She's doing the piano stuff after that. So this had to be the planned peak, right, with the medley and all that.
Yeah, I guess so. And I mean, the performance quality with the dancers, the sets, everything going on, I thought that I was expecting the entire performance to be like this. It seemed like the most effort was put into this part. And yeah, it was like the climax before it all kind of slows down. Right. And
Don't Blame Me, Love Live.
Long Live.
Or Love Live, Love Live. Long Live. Oh man, I didn't write any of those words correctly. New Year's Day, it's a nice song. Then we'd get that weird movie where she's in the desert, although I liked how they did the smoke going back into the cans thing in reverse. It was neat, whatever.
Well, let me say real quick, on New Year's Day, I love that artists are doing this thing where they have a synthesizer that's set into the body of a grand piano. Because, like, you know, you can see, like, the electric pedal, which is a giveaway that she's not actually playing a grand piano, which would be horrible to tour with. Always out of tune. Sure. But it's cool. I think it adds a really nice production value to just kind of pop a Nord right in the frame of a grand piano. I just think it's cool.
Yeah, yeah. So apologies for the rush schedule, but New Year's Day calls, work shift and all that. Getaway Car and Call It What You Want, 2 pretty good songs of Reputation. You know, we talked at length. over the past few minutes here about how I personally, or maybe you agree that, it's like, okay, sure. This would be the Reputation encore. Is it her best possible encore? No, but it's a really good Reputation encore, for that tour. I have my note here, really committed to Reputation songs, ! This is a long fucking movie, ! And then we get a second song from Red, a very nice, we're never getting back together right into, this is why we can't have nice things.
We are never getting back together. We are never ever getting back together is so pop punk. It is insane.
There's probably 7,000 dozen.
Yes, covers of it. Pop punk covers.
Gritty reboot covers. Yeah,
it's built for
YouTube.
It. It's so good. It was a great performance, and I think getting into This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things. Like seeing it live gave the recorded version a breath of new life for me. The water fountain was cool as I mean, seeing the dancers like splashing around in it. Yeah, I mean, it was
super fun.
It was really, really
She knows how to have fun. I will say that. She knows how to write a song. This was still a very fun show, even if it was in 1989, as we've mentioned. I got no real complaints other than the obvious ones. I mean, it was the best of what it could have been. It just, it was the Reputation tour through and through.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote, it seems she is happy and super stoked to be doing this song. And I feel like that's what I was missing from the rest. I know that the whole point of Reputation is kind of like this facade and it's contrived and whatever, but like seeing her just seem happy was incredible.
Oh, venting a ton of frustration. She talks about, there's this like loose reference throughout the album where she talks about this like the character of this freeloader guy she's dating who spends her money and has the keys to her place and stuff. Yeah. And I don't know if that's referencing anybody in particular, but it was just like, whatever this is, at the end, there's that screen where it's blah, 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 Reputation had to die to, quote, felt truly alive or whatever, feel truly alive. Mostly, I just hope she's safe from her stalkers and that this was seemingly, hopefully, the most healthy way to vent any frustrations that come with all of it. And yeah, she seems happy, seems to enjoy the songs. There's some very good songs off the album. It seemed like a fun time. Too bad we couldn't be there in Dallas. Your new favorite city, right?
It's good. It's pretty good. Also, quick little fun story here. It was technically in Arlington, Texas, which is just like a not suburb, but I guess
metro area.
Yeah, of Dallas. And when I got an iPhone for the first time, which would have been like 2010 or something, the iPhone 4S, I had my weather app set to Arlington because I lived in Arlington, Virginia. But it was set to Arlington, Texas for like 2 years. And I was like, dude, this weather app is terrible.
That's a good story.
Man, these iPhones
this is way
suck,
off.
dude.
Man. Well, we're about the threshold, man, and that was a lovely anecdote.
Right.
Do you want to just end it and seal it, sign, seal, deliver?
Well, I'll give my closing thoughts.
Okay, closing thoughts. I've given all mine, and I'm just going to repeat it. So we'll leave it with you on this one.
I texted you right before we recorded saying this could be a one-word episode, and with very few exceptions, I would say that one word would just be uninspired.
Wow.
It felt like the crowd was being performed at rather than like being engaged with.
You can't just slap some bracelets on some people and light them up, as you're saying, it seemed like.
Yeah, it seemed like less personal. I don't know. I mean,
I would say the album itself is very inspired from a lot of stuff that needed to be vented, but maybe you're right about this tour being, we've seen the best version of it already, and it's weird to see the B+, maybe even B- version of things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I felt that the album was uninspired as well. Like, whereas 1989, sorry to compare again, felt like one cohesive thought, just in the form of a ton of bangers in one album. Reputation, for me, when I listen to it, feels like a bunch of attempts at hitting different markets all thrown into one thing, like a mixtape rather than like an album or something. And I feel like it came across in the tour. I mean, I'm glad that we have it. There's a lot of good songs that I will revisit in the live version. But if I'm going to watch Taylor Swift live, I am watching the 1989 World Tour documentary live. If I'm listening to an album, it's going to be 1989 on repeat for months at a time. And that's just, it's on brand, right, for what we said with the album review. I'm not sure why I expected anything different, but that's kind of my thoughts. Just, it felt to me sadly uninspired because I know that she is so much in my opinion, she's so much better than what came across in the documentary, but I feel like I'm on an island with that with that view. So
I would say, yeah, people that bought tickets probably were pleased because they probably didn't see both live, so they were probably like, yeah, which is fine. And it was fun. I will say this, and this is my closing thought. I'm going to get the phrase "dive bar on the east side where you at" written in cursive up my arm.
Yes.
And that's going to be the only tattoo I ever get.
I am planning my Taylor Swift tattoo right now, actually. It'll be there soon or at some point. So I love that line, though.
No, it's either that or Nikes and dark jeans look at you.
Yeah.
On the other, both arms.
Oh, damn. Never seen that color.
In cursive, dancing up.
Okay, so I'm glad we have it. I still wish I went just to experience it.
Hopefully there's more where that came from.
Yeah.
There is certainly.
Probably another 3 years. I'll start saving now for those front row tickets.
That's right. It's kind of like there's a kids' college fund, and then there's the Taylor Swift
right.
return to country tour fund. All right, man. Well, I got to go. It sounds like my car is functional now, so I got to call a body shop and stuff. And I am looking forward to thanking you later for editing out my phone ringing in the middle from the body shop itself. So, and the numerous sniffles that occurred throughout this entire show. Sorry, everybody. Yeah, but I love you, man. Thanks for squeezing this in. Happy New Year to everyone, including Kyle, who never gets a shout out, even though he's a fan. We always mention everyone else by name. There's too many to keep track of, but thank you all for listening. Find us on Twitter @_reminiscentfm and recommend a band for us to do. We always cover Taylor stuff. I think that's a tradition now, kind of out of nowhere, kind of from scratch, but we'll have a return to form in the coming weeks. I think we have a 2001 mixtape draft coming up
next week.
That's set to release, I think, next Friday. And yeah, it's exciting, and join us. Thanks for being here. And Tom, I look forward to 2019 full of reminiscent episodes with you and Zach, who should be joining us again next week.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to the draft, and Happy New Year, man. I'm stoked to pump out another 365 with you.
Yeah, it's going to be wild. Yeah, we made it. All right, man. I love you.
Right.
Talk to you soon.
Love you too, dude. See ya. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. We were so excited to finally be able to do this episode. It may not sound like we had a lot of fun watching the documentary, but we did. We are both very critical of the album, but that doesn't mean that we don't absolutely love Taylor Swift. So thank you so much for listening. Tweet at us @_reminiscentfm. Let us know what your favorite song from the tour was, and we'll talk to you next week. Happy New Year. We love you all, and don't forget to shake it off.